Good morning to the family of Jehovah, not the Satan bots. Today is the Tesha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the day both temples were destroyed. And things are not well here in Israel. So I am Moshe. I'm a Cohen, which in English is a priest, and I live in Israel, in the lower Galilee. I've been here a number of years, and I have never seen a heat wave anything like this before. Not that it's so intense, but that it's so long. It must be going for weeks now, 2 weeks or something. And it's wrecking South Europe. I mean, Palermo, Sicily's burning up. Greece is burning up. Other places are having, lots of heat, lots of fire. America, it's going on all over the places. Some places are hitting 50 degrees centigrade, which is pretty crazy. Once you start getting like 108, 110, the roads start melting and stuff. It's really been an experience, and it was supposed to be over on Saturday, not Friday night, Saturday, but now it's, according to them, it's pushed off till Sunday. And I don't know if this is going to bring relief to everybody or just Israel, but it's going to be a 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit reduction of the temperatures, reducing us back to normal hot summer days. The worst summers historically now, since we're in end times, somewhere in end times, the temperature may or may not be that hot this August. I don't know. For many years, the Israelis, since the economy got good, which was probably around 2000 or something like that, and it's not good for everybody. It's good for a lot of people. But remember, in Israel, they're not going to want to hire you if you're 50 years or over, because they can't get rid of you under the labor laws, which are heavily socialistic. Yes, they could get rid of you if the company suffered financial problems and you had a layoff and you were laying off a large amount of people at the same time. They would probably get complaints from some people, and they would probably come investigate. And if you could show the profit and loss statement in the previous 2 to 3 years and show a reduction in sales and revenue, and I'm sure they would understand that that was a layoff. Okay, but you'd probably have to give them a lot of money to send them down the road. Their vacation pay and severance pay and stuff like that. Once I got, well, anyway, it's costly for them to do that. Now, if they just decide they want to get rid of you because you're getting old, and workers show up and you're tired, and you're not the same, and they bring you in at 50, and then 16 years later you're 66. Well, they may or may not be able to get rid of you. I think they could. Because you're eligible for some kind of pension. Maybe they can just push you out. I don't know the whole story. I got better things to do than to read the secular law here in Israel and try to understand Hebrew, which is, I could read the law in English in America, and I could kind of understand it, sort of, but, try doing that in Hebrew, forget about it. You'd have to have a college degree in Hebrew and then have some legal understanding on top of that. So I had a lot of friends that were attorneys and attorneys that worked for me in the past. I had 2 that worked for me. Maybe I had more, I don't remember. But so it's a little bit, troubling and difficult. Okay, so what we're going to discuss today is what's going on with the weather. Now, the Lord had put this on me for about 2 days before today, at least a day. And I decided to look it up, and, I know that there's a scripture that says the furnace of the Lord is in Jerusalem. And that would have applicability to 70 AD, for instance, destruction of Solomon's temple, and so forth. Now, before we get into it, let's do our praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Now let me see if we're getting background noises, because I have the door open. Of course, there's nobody here but me, and I want to hear things because we have the birds inside today for the heat, and that's the bird noises you're hearing. There's 3 African greys, and most people like that. And I want to go take a look at the live stream and see if we're hearing any other background noises. In the event we are, I will close the door immediately. Okay. We'll take a look at the live stream and see if we're hearing any other background noises. In the event we are, and we are hearing background noises, so I am going to now shut the door, which takes a few seconds. As long as I don't trip over the fur pieces. I know who the fur pieces are. Okay. We should be a lot quieter now. All right. There we go. Do a little housekeeping here. If we get any chat deletions, spiritual warfare. Lay it on. So far, we've been pretty good for a few days. It could be that YouTube stopped whatever the app was that these idiots were using from working. And that could be like it's over forever. That's such a pretty serious thing that I imagine they put the computer people on it pretty hot and heavy. They have so many different applications for different devices in YouTube, different versions of the operating system of different devices, that it's probably a big job for them. But they got a lot of resources, so. I'll just be a few more seconds, no big deal. Get my email address up there, which is Israel Giving, one word with the number 7 at the end of it, Israel Giving 7 at gmail.com. I liked it much better when they had little private email services that actually cared about you and you had support people you could talk to. Then this free email business that they started where they totally control you. And, I don't like that. And I can remember when there was several auction companies that were doing well other than eBay. And I remember when there were 7 big search engines. Yep, 7. And that was a much better life than what we got today with this one killer big search engine and two lesser big search engines. So it's like, do you want to buy a Chevy or a Ford? There's no independent people out there to speak of anymore. Okay. So we got all that done, and feel free to ask questions any time during this. Okay, for prayer requests for MB, Mike Bravo, MB, Mike Bravo, MB, to get rid of the flea infestation in the buildings. So MB, Mike Bravo, get rid of the flea infestation in the house and the buildings. Okay. SH, Sierra Hotel, SH, Sierra Hotel, SH, prayer to not have to work on Shabbat for SH, prayer to not have to work on Shabbat. Okay. So we need to deal with, what's going on with the furnace of the Lord. What is this? And we're not talking about Daniel's furnace right now. And we're not talking about the smoke coming up out of the pit in Revelation 9, because that's the smoke as of from a furnace. That's the smoke they're talking about. We're not talking about the smoke of a furnace. We're talking about the furnace. So let's be clear about this. And we're not talking about a literal furnace that Daniel and them were thrown into. That was a real furnace. Like in my apartment building in the Bronx, there was one day I went down there with my mother, and they had a guy, and they'd call him the super, or the superintendent. It's super short for superintendent. And he would be in the live in the basement of these buildings. Every building had one. We were all Jewish in that neighborhood, and the only non-Jews living there that I could recall were the superintendents of the various buildings. We had an Irish one, we had an Italian one, those were both Catholic, and I don't remember all of them, but they usually stuck around for 4 or 5 years. They didn't come and go. They stayed for a long time. They got a free apartment. They got some kind of money, and they had to do things like they had to mop the floors of the building every so often. Now, there was kind of crushed stone floors, and one guy we had washed it every week, and then we had others that would do it once a month. I don't know what the deal was. The building changed hands every few years. Somebody would buy it, a slumlord or something like that. It was rent control, so they couldn't throw you out of the building, and the rents were pretty low. I know around mid-60s or so, I think my parents were paying about $100 a month. I think if you go into the 50s, they were paying about $75. It was a 1.5 bedroom apartment. They liked living there for the neighborhood because it was a Jewish neighborhood. There was a lot of Yiddish spoken, although my parents were born in America. They had perfect English, and they went to college. My mother never finished, my father did. And my grandparents lived there, and aunts and uncles lived there. And when I say they lived there, they lived within 400 meters or yards, you could say, of where we lived. So it wasn't they lived there, they lived a very brief walk, and you saw them all the time. My great-grandparents, too, were that close on one side, on my mother's side. Now, my father's father lived all the way down around Coney Island. He liked it down there in Brooklyn, although he used to live in the Bronx. And when my father married my mother, it was an apartment that my father and his father lived in. My father went to NYU in the Bronx to study engineering, and that was back then, without the traffic. He had a car in the Depression because my grandfather made out pretty good financially. So when he was 18, he was driving in New York with a car. So I would guess when he went to school, let me think for a second, it was a few years before World War II, and then he got out before World War II, and he worked as an aeronautical engineer, working for companies that were basically designing and manufacturing aircraft for the government for the war effort. So he was exempt, but he used to be he was what did they call him? Like in actually some countries it was an air raid warden, but a civil guard. The police superficially trained him like for 10 days or five, whatever, very superficial. They issued him a weapon, a 38 revolver, when they went out on patrol, and their main function was really to be out if there was an air attack or a ground attack or any kind of attack on America. Typically, the field was an air attack. They wanted the people to close the curtains in their house and the light got out, keep the lights down. And they would go, if they saw lights on, they would, bang on the door and tell them to knock it out, knock it off. And if the people wouldn't do it, they'd probably call the regular police who would come over there and yell at them. And if they were antagonistic, they would probably arrest them so the light would stay off, or just give them a fine or scare them, or combinations thereof. That would be their primary purpose, is to make sure the lights were out, because the planes didn't have the GPS and stuff like that, and they needed to be able to see the city, so they tried to black out the whole city during an air raid drill. So when they conducted an air raid drill, these civil guard people would be out in the street. They had some kind of uniform they had on. I don't know exactly what it was. He didn't talk too much about it. He wasn't enthralled with it, but he did it. And they didn't talk to the kids about the war because the Jews were getting exterminated and they didn't want the kids to grow up knowing about that. So when you got older, you learned about the Holocaust, but when you were growing up, it was, like a bowl of cherries. You didn't, you were growing up in the 50s America. Food was basically, organic, and it was delicious. The fruit and vegetables didn't taste like they do today. I don't think you could say that they did. They were different, and the meats were good. I don't think they were steroiding the meat, and prices were cheap. I mean, I could tell you, like in the late '60s, a pound of T-bone was like 98 cents. In the 50s, you could have had 27 cents in 1953 or something. It was pretty cheap. It's pretty cheap. You could go to a luncheonette in the late 50s and have yourself like a cheeseburger, fries, and a soda and get out of there for $1 with a tip, or 75 cents even. So now we're talking about a kid filling up. An adult may want to have 2 hamburgers. They weren't Whoppers, And that was, McDonald's was barely beginning. Burger King and Wendy's were not around, Tasty Freeze and those kind of places were flourishing. Carvel was the name in the Bronx. And when we played basketball in the summer in the heat at night, we would walk over to Carvel, which is 3 or 4 blocks, and wait on the line because everybody was going to Carvel in the heat of the summer. And a lot of the people had a weight loss problem. In other words, they weren't getting obese, but they were chunking up from eating junk. Because junk food, now we're talking mid-60s, the latter 60s even, junk food was becoming pretty common. In the 50s, you didn't really have much junk food. They promoted junk on TV like soda. So, yeah, people would go in the summer and buy themselves soda like Coke, Pepsi, orange soda, 7-Up, and we, of course, as the Jews, like Dr. Brown soda. Put it in the fridge, and it was hot, they would drink cold soda. Well, soda is a great way to gain weight. It's got a lot of sugar in it. I don't think that they were even aware of the fact that they had caffeine in it, and ice cream. So you went to Carvel and they gave you a big shake. I mean, this sucker was, a waxed cup. It was huge. It had to be 16 or more ounces. And they would throw 2 scoops of ice cream in there and other junk plus soda. Root beer soda was one flavor. They had a few flavors, not too many. And the ice cream, the soda itself was cold. They put ice in there, but I think it was ground up like shaved ice or something. It was cold. That thing was cold, and the scoops of ice cream made it cold. The ice cream would sort of melt in the soda, and they give you a straw and a spoon. And after we were playing basketball, we were thirsty. So we'd go there and we'd get these big things. Back then they were probably 45 cents or something like that. They were cheap. And we would drink them. And they made you feel better because you got a sugar rush. You had some caffeine from the soda, I believe. And it was cold as all get up. But 20 minutes or 30 minutes after you drank it, you got thirsty from all the sugar. But nobody was teaching us any of this. We didn't understand. We were pretty illiterate to it, So, of course, if we were really thirsty, and today you would go and you would get yourself a bottle of water, some kind of spring water or something that's cold, and you would drink that. The cold gets down in your core, and it does cool you off. It also freezes your larynx, but it doesn't make it like ice, so it does cool you off drinking cold drinks. Every now and then I grab a soda from the fridge that's really cold and I drink it, and it really, this heat, I did that yesterday. I drank a cream soda, a Dr. Brown's, and it really made me feel better. So you're hydrating and you're also cooling yourself off. And the Dr. Brown's sodas has less crap in it than like Coke or Pepsi. When you read the labels, it appears that way anyway. I'm not a doctor or a food expert, and I don't have any medical advice or dietary advice to give you. I'm just sharing my personal experiences, that's all. So that was what we did. So they had these superintendents. So when the building was cold, they had a furnace in the basement, a big sucker, huge. And later on, like in the 60s, they would use diesel. But in the 40s and 50s, they used coal. And the coal truck would come in probably September, probably August or September. And it was a big truck, and it had a chute where the guy would, there was a way that from the street, the truck would pour the coal into a chute. It was probably about 2 feet wide, and it had some probably 4, 5, 6 inch high walls, and it would go down at an angle, and there was an entrance to the basement, and there was a way that it would just slide into the room where they had the big metal furnace. And I went down there one night, and the guy's name was McManus, I remember that. And he was this was the winter, cold winter. He's in that room, and he has no shirt on, and he's sweating in front of the furnace with the big door open. The door was pretty big, and he's shoveling coal into this roaring fire. And that's a real furnace, okay? So we're not talking about going in the furnace. All right, so what are we talking about? Let's start laying the groundwork. Let's go to Deuteronomy 4:20. You'll enjoy this, by the way. I hope, I think. Deut 4:20. Deuteronomy 4:20. But the Lord has taken you and brought you forth out of the iron furnace out of Egypt to be unto him a people of inheritance, as you are this day. Now, first of all, this is a prime example scripture of God selected a people unto him, and that's the Israelites. And he took them out of Egypt, and he refers to Egypt as an iron furnace. Well, temperatures in Egypt are quite high. They were not living in an iron furnace. Nobody was putting them in ovens and baking them or cooking them, none of that. He referred to it as the temperature was hot. Now, was it 130 degrees? I don't think they would have a good chance of survival over there. But it was probably over 100 or something like that. You could find people that are going to tell you it was 120 degrees in Egypt, and look, how do they know? They looked it up in the Farmer's Almanac. How do they know? They looked it up on the internet. How did the people on the internet know? They found old 60-minute files on TV shows. Come on, how did they know? They don't know. They don't know. Now you're reading a lot of reports that the government is sharing about UFOs. I'm just seeing this in the media. I'm not saying that I believe this, because I don't do. Personally, my opinion is it's not true. But they're out there, and then there's so-called whistleblowers saying that the government has the bodies of extraterrestrials or aliens from another place other than the world. Well, I don't consider that to be valid in my own opinion. I would like them to explain to me how these foreign travelers from other worlds penetrate the firmament, because according to the Bible, on the other side of the firmament is water, gazillions of tons of water, and if they penetrated the firmament to come down to earth, they would break the firmament and the water would gush down, and we would have another Noah's style flood. And of course that's not happening. So I don't give it any credence, because the Bible doesn't. Being a Bible lawyer, I don't see it. But they're promoting it with the people, and it seems to be getting people pretty interested. It's definitely a good distraction away from the world going into massive wars. Okay, so the furnace here in Egypt is the hot temperatures. Are we clear? Okay. Moving along, we're going to have a bunch of scriptures to build this case, because I am a Bible lawyer and I want to present you with the evidence. Let's just look at some other scriptures. Isaiah 48:10. Behold, I have refined thee, but not with silver. But it says, whoa. Let's say it says not with silver. Let's check the words here in the Hebrew. I have refined thee. Let's check that word. 6884, Strong's number. Seraph, smelt, refined, tested. Okay. And then the word but not is lo, which means no, not but not. So what he's saying is behold, which is hine. You know, there's that song, Hine, Yeshua, Hamelech, Israel. It's Hine, here. You know, it's behold, maybe it's a stretch, behold. And then it doesn't say I have refined, it says refined. Behold, oops, moved around. Behold, refined, doesn't say thee, lo, and then it says silver, which is kesef, which is what we use for the word money today, but it means silver. So it's saying lo kesef, not silver, or no silver. I have chosen thee. Let's check the words on that, because they add a lot of words in to screw around with it. Bechar, 977 Strongs. chose, that's a good one. Chose, then it says thee in the furnace of affliction. Now, whoa, wait a minute. There's so many words here. Chose, and then let's look up the word 3564, kur, and it means furnace. So it says lo kesef, no silver, chose, and then it doesn't say thee in the furnace. It doesn't say that. It says furnace. I've chose furnace, and the word for affliction is ani, which is affliction, poverty, misery. Okay. So it's saying hine, behold, refined, low kesef, not silver, chose furnace affliction. So he's saying he's refining him in a furnace of affliction. That's really what it's saying, not what they're telling you in the English, okay? For mine own sake, even for my own sake, will I do it for how should my name be polluted, and I will not give my glory unto another. So he's saying, they're my people for my name's sake, I chose them, and they're polluting my name, so I'm putting them in the furnace of affliction so they learn who is Jehovah, and they fear Jehovah, and they do the right thing and live eternally with gazillions of blessings in heaven with me. This is what's really going on. But down here, in the flesh, there's going to be the furnace of affliction to straighten them out and get them on the right path. That's a mouthful, but that's what this means. Hearken unto me, O Yaakov and Israel, my called. And what's the word for my called? Kara, which means to, let's see what Strong's is saying, the call out. I think it's a decent translation. To call forth, to call out. It's a reasonable translation for sure. My called out, I, which is 589 in thee, means I. Who, I am he. Then he says, I, Rishon, the first. I also am the last. That's true. My hand also hath laid the foundation. Well, if it's the first, it would actually be in Jehovah. I'm sorry, it would be Jehovah. My hand also hath laid the foundation of the earth. My right hand hath spanned the heavens. When I call unto them, they stand up together. All ye, assemble yourselves, and hear which among them hath declared these things. Jehovah hath loved him. He will do his pleasure on Babel, and his arm shall be on the Chaldeans. I, even I, have spoken, yea, I have called him, I have brought him, and he shall make his way prosperous. Come ye there unto me, hear you this, I have not spoken in secret from the beginning, from the time that it was, there am I, and now Adonai Jehovah, and Adonai Jehovah Ruach has sent me. So he's saying, now, Atah, Adonai Jehovah Ruach, it doesn't say and his, it says Ruach, and then it says Shaliach, which is the guy from FedEx comes to the door. He calls you on the phone first. Mise, who's this? It says Shaliach FedEx. So the one sent with the message or something like that. Okay. Thus saith Jehovah Gaal, which is Redeemer. So the Wonder Woman, the one that plays Wonder Woman most recently in the movies is Gal Gadot is the name, which is Redeemer. Oy vey. The Holy One of Israel, that's Kadosh Yisrael. Wait a minute. Kadosh Israel. And Jehovah Elohim, which teaches thee to profit, which leadeth thee by the way that thou shouldst go. Okay, so let's get back into verse 10. I don't want to go through the whole chapter. Behold, I have refined thee, but not with silver. I have chosen thee in the furnace of affliction. So he's not chosen thee in the furnace of affliction. It's making you think it's referencing Daniel, which is a confusion they added into it. So it's again, hine, behold, refined, okay, lo, no, kesef, silver, ani, chose, furnace of affliction. So he, to refine them, he chose the furnace of affliction. And the furnace of affliction in Egypt, we understand, was the heat. Do you got it? Sure you do. Let me check the chat. All right. Nobody's deleting our chat. Okay, so it's not so hard to grasp it. I'll keep developing it though, and then we'll go into, interpretations that we could use for the present time. Let's go to Isaiah 31, verse 9. Isaiah 31. 9 is the last verse of Isaiah 31. It's a big verse, but... And he shall pass over to his stronghold for fear, and his princes shall be afraid of the ensign of the sign, saith Jehovah, whose fire is in Zion. Zion, or Zion, generally means the Jerusalem area, but can also apply to Israel. So let's look up the word 6726. It means parched place. You've heard me complain about that. It's not TS like Sion. I mean, it sounds like that if you're an English speaker. It's a Zedic sound. It's exotic. It's Sion. Like a TZ. IJON, maybe, something like that. I don't know. I'm transliterating. There's no real formal structure or rules for transliterating. It's seat of the pants, really. Okay. As Sion, as a permanent capital, mountain of Jerusalem, Mount Zion. Okay. When you're dealing with the word ensign, it's 52, 51. Something lifted up, a sign, a signal, a banner. Implication, a flagstaff, a signal, a token, a banner, a pole, a sail, a stand. The appearance of the Son of Man in the clouds is an ensign or a sign, but more so to those that believe in him, because John 6:40. Those that look upon him, those that believe that look upon him shall have everlasting life. Okay, moving along. Shall be afraid of the sign, the ensign, saith Jehovah, whose fire, and that word should be ash. No, it's ear, or. That's a different word. It's like a flame. It's not or like light, it's a different word. A flame. Well, light of a fire, I guess you would say. It's the flame of the light of the fire. So, whose fire is in Zion and his furnace in Jerusalem. And the word for furnace is tanur. And it's like furnace or fire pot. Furnace or fire pot or an old-fashioned oven, you know. They used to have ovens where they made pizza where there was a fire in there, you know. That's a long time ago. Now I think they use gas or electricity. I think probably electricity. They were made out of metal and they were wide doored and they went deep and they had a wood. They were on wood. It wasn't metal. It was wood. Anyway. So the furnace is in Jerusalem. Okay. That's the seat of most of the protests right now, for whatever that's worth, which may not be much. Okay. More scriptures, so we really build this case. 1 Kings 8:51. I want to be a good Bible lawyer. A lot of evidence. 1 Kings 8:51. For they be thy people and thine inheritance, speaking of the Israelites, which thou hast brought us forth out of Egypt, from the midst of the furnace of iron. Now the word for iron is Bartzel. Bartzel, not S. Tz. S. Tz. This is a tz. Bartzel. Iron. It's basically iron. I mean, I think they got the it's like they seem to have gotten it right as iron. That thine eyes may be open unto the supplication of thy servant. Now the supplication is techna. I think that's like petitioning in prayer type of a word, you know, favor or something like that. Of thy servant and unto the supplication of thy people Israel. It's not Israel in Hebrew, it's Yisrael. To hearken unto them in all that they call for unto thee, to listen to their prayers. I didn't wash, I waxed. I used the floor cleaner this morning. So the dogs were in here a lot yesterday, so there's these cloths you buy, they're wet with some kind of chemicals, and they got a hole in the center. They're big long things, and you put them on a squeegee, and you fold them over, and you clean the floor with them. They're rather effective, really. Of course, we got tile floors. You couldn't do that with carpeting. I mean, of course not. Carpeting, you take a vacuum and you clean it, but how good is that? This really cleans it. Now, you could get some that are more expensive that have a disinfectant in them, and they stink not so good at all. Not good. And they have others that really stink that have insecticide in them. So if you had a problem with some kind of bugs in your house, like fleas or something, and you had tile floors, there's no place for them to hide in a tile floor. Tile is impenetrable. They can't burrow in like a carpet, you know. So you would mop, you put these wipe cloths, these big suckers, on your squeegee, which has got a, the rubber part with the metal on it, like that looks like a windshield wiper blade. They got them that go out to 3 feet, 2 feet, 1 feet, 18 inches. We usually got about a 18 to 24-inch one. I think the one I'm using now is about 15, 18 inches. You put it on there and you clean the floor, and it gets a lot of dirt off the floor. So dogs, they're out in the yard some hours a day, even though in the heat, and they bring the ambience of the outdoors back into the house, which is the dirt, So you clean it up, and then it leaves a residue odor. Although I did have the window open, I'm still smelling it. But it has a perfume odor in there. They have different. It's crazy. You get them with different scents. You could get like different perfume flavors in there, but they're, they smell like the perfume the dog groomer sprays on your dog. I don't like them spraying that on my dog. So it's junk. It's not a nice smell. So we use that anyway. It's still smelling. It'll take a while. So. Okay, do you know what Israel means? It means God prevails. It's also used for the people of Israel, but Yisrael is it could also be interpreted that he will rule as God. It has different kind of uses. Okay, anyway. For thou didst separate them from among all the people word is of Haaretz, of the earth, to be thine inheritance. And inheritance is possession or property. As thou spakest by the hand of Moses. See, why don't they interpret this better? Why do they do inheritance as to confuse you and make you think it's something you're going to inherit instead of just property or people? Possession would be a better term. Because they don't want you to think that you're gods. That's why they do it. They want you to think it's an inheritance, so one day in the millennium, you'll be gods, but not now. That's not what it's saying. It's his possession. And when you're a believer in Yeshua HaMashiach, you have to be in Israel. Who is Yeshua? First of all, he's a Jew from Judah, from the line of David, which is inside of Judah. He's the king of Israel. He's the high priest of the order of Melchizedek. You have his Holy Spirit, and then they try to teach you you're not in Israel. How the heck could you not be in Israel? All Israel shall be saved, Romans 11. Of course you're in Israel. Find me a scripture that says all the divisive denomination churches with their disagreements, their varying doctrines, and, they're all going to be saved. I like to find that one. It's not in there. You'd have to find that in 2 Freddie, chapter 2, verse 8. The problem with that is 2 Freddie doesn't exist. Nor does 1 Anthony or, the book of Gloria. I mean, this stuff's not in there. All right? It's just not there. For thou didst separate them from among all the people of the earth to be thy possession. Thy possession, not inheritance, as thou spakest by the hand of Moses, thy servant, when thou broughtest our fathers out of Egypt. That's where the furnace is. So, where are you going to be before you get delivered? Come on, let's try to be Bible lawyers. Where was Israel before it got delivered? In the furnace of Egypt. Right? or right. You got two choices. Either that's right or it's right, okay? Boxing you in like a shady lawyer. No, I'm kidding. You're in the furnace now, and that's where you get delivered from. Silver platter. Checking the chat for a moment. Nothing deleted. Okay, back to the scriptures. All right. Jeremiah 11:4. Yeremahu in Hebrew. Jeremiah, that's probably not a great probably not doing the accent good on that. Jeremiah 11:4. Which I commanded your fathers in the day that I brought them forth out of the land of Egypt from the iron furnace. Where are you before you're going to get delivered? You're going to be in the furnace, which means you're not going to be in a pizza oven or something like that. You're going to be in the heat, dry heat. Silver platter. Saying, obey my voice. Wait a minute. English is wrong. Iron furnace saying, obey my voice and do them according to all which I command you, so shall you be my people and I will be your God. I guess it's the commandments, the mitzvah of the Torah. That I may perform the oath which I have sworn unto your fathers. They have to come into line with him to perform the oath. If they're going to run around, with debauchery and alcoholic and drug addiction and robbing and stealing and lying and murder, he can't perform the covenant, right? Okay, perform that. All right. Which your fathers to give them a land flowing with milk and honey. The word for milk is kalab, not challah, kalab. I think you would easily and safely be able to apply this to goat milk or cow milk, milk and honey. Honey is dabash. Somebody's got a name, dabash, I think, that we know. Don't know well, but anyway. It has a connotation of being gummy, like honey. You ever get honey on you? Yucky, sticky. And honey, as it is this day. Then answered I and said, so be it, O Lord. Then Jehovah said unto me, proclaim all these words in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem, saying, hear ye the words of this Brit covenant, and do them. That's performing Moses' law. For I earnestly protested unto your fathers in the day that I brought them up out of the land of Egypt, even unto this day, rising early and protesting, saying, obey my voice. Well, when he took them out of the land of Egypt, he took them out of the furnace. Okay, more scriptures. Psalm 21:9. The Psalms are quite prophetic, Okay. Thou shalt make them as a fiery oven in the time of thine anger. Jehovah shall swallow them up in his wrath, and the fire shall devour them. Their fruit shalt thou destroy from the earth. So See, we're not the only ones getting the heat wave. The heathen are getting the heat wave, the goyim. And it's a warning to them, but they're not getting delivered out of the furnace like we did back in the days of Egypt. They don't get delivered out of anything. So, thou shalt make them as a fiery oven. The word for fiery is 784. That's esh, that's fire. So you could say as a fire oven in the tongue. Let's check the word for oven on, make sure. Yeah, oven, a furnace, a fiery furnace, not oven, fiery furnace. In the time Hesman, no, hot, et, okay. Time of thine anger, Jehovah shall swallow them up in his wrath, and the esh, the fire, shall devour them. Their fruit shalt thou destroy from the earth, this would be their children, and their seed, or their fruit, what they produced, and their seed would be their children, I guess would be better that way, from among the children of men, for they intended evil against thee, those are your spots. They imagined a mischievous device, which they are not able to perform. Therefore shalt thou make them turn their back, when thou shalt make ready thine arrows upon the strings against the face of them. Be thou exalted, Jehovah, in thine own strength, so will we sing and praise thy power. Wow. We praise him every day. I don't know who else on the internet does. Ezekiel 22:17, Ezekiel. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, the house of Israel is to me become dross. All they are brass and tin and iron and lead. In the midst of the furnace they are even the dross of silver. Therefore, thus saith Adonai Jehovah, because ye are all become dross, behold, therefore I will gather you into the midst of Jerusalem, as they gather silver and brass and iron and lead and tin into the midst of the furnace, to blow the fire upon it, to melt it. So will I gather you in mine anger and in my fury, and will leave you there and melt you. Yea, I will gather you and blow upon you in the fire of my wrath, and you shall be melted in the midst thereof. As silver is melted in the midst of the furnace, so shall ye be melted in the midst thereof. And you shall know that I am Jehovah, have poured out my fury upon you. Now, this is the old days when he was punishing Jerusalem, but Jerusalem is this furnace. When they do the attack in Zechariah 12, they surround Judah and Jerusalem, probably a lot of them around Jerusalem. So there's going to be what happens to them in Jerusalem. The two witnesses in Zechariah 12 burn them up on the right hand and the left hand. Not just Jerusalem, but all of them, all the enemies, they get burned up. Jehovah says he's a consuming fire, so they get burned up. The two witnesses are the two anointed sons. When you read the last verse in Zechariah 4:14, and you read it in a decent translation or study the Hebrew, all the Hebrew manuscripts agree. It's the sons of clarified oil, which means anointed sons. The word for Mashiach is anointed. Okay, in English you can trace it back. It's Jesus Christ, from Christos, and the word is Mashiach in the Hebrew. That's where it comes from. It means anointed. So Yeshua is the firstborn anointed son, thus he gets a double portion. He's the only begotten one, the only begotten son that was born of the Holy Spirit and the flesh. The two witnesses are born of flesh parents, both parents. Okay? But they came down from heaven, and thus they go up to heaven the same way that Yeshua came down on a cloud, right after they rose from the dead. I was just thinking so. Okay, so the bad ones are getting a warning from this furnace, this heat. If they're not going to heed the warning, they're not going to get delivered. Could they repent and throw themselves at Jehovah for mercy now? Yeah, sure. Would it work? Yeah, sure. Why wouldn't it work if they did it, but they're not doing it? Let the wicked be wicked and the righteous righteous. Okay, so they're going to be destroyed. So it's sort of a warning to them. Malachi 4:1. For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven. Does it really say oven? No, it says furnace. See how they mess with you? That shall burn as a furnace, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith Jehovah of hosts, that they leave them neither root nor branch. So you got it right here again on a silver platter. Ta-da! Think like a Bible lawyer. The Bible is all truth. Thus its evidence. So you're presenting your evidence like a lawyer. I mean it in the sense of arguing scriptures, not suing people. Matthew 13:50. And shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. It's sort of a warning. It is a warning of a sort that you've got this furnace, you've got the heat. Of course, he's not going to make it 212 degrees where you'd melt, you know. It's a warning that what's going to happen if you don't knock it off. Okay, these people that are getting ready. Look, in the UN, there's nobody in the UN that says we need to give Israel back the land that God made a covenant to give them, because if we stop God from fulfilling this covenant, we're going to wind up in the furnace and the lake of fire. There's not one nation in the UN that talks like this. There's not one Politico in Israel that talks like this. Ben Gvir and Smotrich would probably agree with that in private, but they got other issues that are not good at all. So, they don't want Israel fulfilling its role in prophecy. They don't want God running the earth through Israel as the head of all the nations. So this is a warning that you're in a furnace type environment, as again evidenced by Egypt is the iron furnace, and they had houses they lived in Goshen and stuff like that. They didn't sleep in furnaces or anything like that, okay? You know, they didn't go to bed in a pizza oven or anything, okay? They didn't even sleep in a microwave, nothing, you know, they had a house, okay? So, there you go. When they were in Babylon, only the willing would go to Babylon, and they didn't have a furnace in Babylon. We don't read that. God told them to have children there, they'd be well treated, and that's what happened. Then they had the change of administration over there, and Nebuchadnezzar got pretty crappy towards them, and then the Assyrian got rid of them, Cyrus. knock them over. Luke 12:28. Lucas 12. It's 12:28. 20. If then God so clothes the grass, which is today in the field and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you of little faith? Speaking to the true believers. But going up earlier in the passage, clothes the grass today, but tomorrow it goes into the fire, into the oven. It shouldn't be the oven. The word for oven is, this word is oven. Let's see. Well, it could also mean a furnace, so let's call it a furnace. Into the furnace, how much more will he clothe you? Okay, so for the ungodly, it's saying that he'll clothe them right until the day he flips them in the furnace. So they'll have their Rolls Royces and their citation jets and their mansions and their swimming pools, indoor pools, outdoor pools, bowling alleys in the house, movie theaters in the house, 4 kitchens in the house, 7 bars, 20,000 square feet, no peace, no happiness, no joy, but they'll have all this stuff, right? The pleasures that they could get out of these things is minimal. I used to buy a lot of cars when I was in the world and I had a pretty good amount of money. Not like any of these Bill Gates or anything, not even close, no one near that. But I was able to buy, exotic cars and have a couple at the same time and stuff like that. Take many, many vacations. Eat out anytime I wanted in any restaurant. Buy all kinds of stupid clothes. And, so jewelry and all kinds of stuff. So I'd buy a new car and the book would be almost an inch thick, and I'd buy the thing and I'd go sit like a Mercedes or a Porsche. I'd sit down in the garage with it and I would try working all the controls, and then I'd be, gosh, I'm so busy. I got things to do now. I got to read this stinking manual. It's going to take hours to go through this, right? It used to be annoying to me. I didn't want it. I was able to buy all kinds of computers whenever I wanted to, but I didn't want to change computers because then I had to learn how to use the new stuff, and I didn't want to put my time into that. I had better things to do with my time than that. I didn't want to do it. You get annoyed with it. You buy these things and it's, so you can imagine buying a new house and then you got to furnish it. So for them, what do? They go to a interior designer and, they're going to buy, go modestly an 8,000 or 9,000 square foot house. And they'll probably budget anywhere from $1 to $10 million to furnish the stupid place. And the interior designer will probably get 10% of what they spend and go out and buy stuff for them. But they're going to get stuff at a discount, so they earn their 10%, So they'll get some artwork, and they're not going to buy Renoirs and Rembrandts and Van Goghs. They'll get nice enough stuff, And they'll get carpets and furniture, and they might spend $25,000 to $250,000 on mattresses. I've never felt these mattresses, but I understand these very expensive mattresses are made out of natural wool and stuff with springs, and they're pretty fantastic. But I know the memory foam stuff is pretty good. If you're going to ask me to guess, the memory foam's probably better than what they got, or at least as good. I don't think they got anything better, but who knows? Waterbeds are very comfortable too, but they're annoying because they move around, they make noise, they slosh around. they're very difficult to heat. You got to put some sort of heating strip underneath them, and those things break after a while. And then, if they break and it's 98 degrees outside, happy days are here again. You got cold water to sleep on, which still isn't that good because the air conditioning is going to get the water cold by 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's going to start giving you cramps and stuff like that. But it's a cheap solution for a bed. It can be orthopedic and comfortable and stuff, but better things. What I did eventually, because I got tired of those heating strips not working when they worked, and you kept them plugged in 24/7, they kept the water at a decent temperature. So what I did instead is I got an electric blanket. I didn't know that there's people that, they knock against those. Anyway, I put the electric blanket over the waterbed and then put a sheet on top of it and slept on that. Did that work? Oh yeah, worked real good. But anyway, they buy all this stuff and then they move into the new house, and they got to learn how to operate the house. They got a big control pad like an iPad or something that's controlling the drapes going up and down, the TV coming out of the wall, dropping down. Oh, heating, lighting, this, that, and the other things, sliding doors, and then you got to sit there and learn all this stuff, and they got to learn it for all these different rooms, and then they have an outside kitchen, usually near the pool, so it usually has refrigerators and stuff. They have incredibly high electric bills. I imagine these people are pulling $5,000 a month on a big 15,000-20,000 square foot mansion, probably $5,000 a month electric, pretty easily. And it could be more because they're heating an outside pool, an outside jacuzzi. Then they're having several jacuzzis in the house, and they have inside pools. Oh, I don't know what they spend. Do they get that much pleasure out of it? No, they don't. It distracts them from the problems and the difficulties and so forth. Some of the ones that get wealthy young, like Tom Cruise or some movie star or someone in inheritance, like they have a wealthy father who gives them an allowance of $1 million a month. Okay, there's lots of people like that. They get even more, and with the $1 million a month, it's usually coming tax free. They got to buy their clothes, their jewelry, their furniture, their condos, their house, whatever, and live on it. It's not that hard for them to live like that. They'll have a mortgage that'll choke a horse. Maybe they'll have an $18,000 mortgage, but they can pay it off over years. And when they become, 40, 45, the house will be clear. They're not going to go out and get any, 300-foot yacht, but they could probably get themselves a used 120-foot yacht, and but they wouldn't be able to support a crew. So if they wanted a yacht, they'd probably get themselves a 60, 70, 80, 90, 100-foot boat that they could drive themselves, or they could hire one guy to drive for them, and then just job out the work where once a week you have a crew from the boatyard, comes around and they wash the entire boat and the decks and clean it once a week or something like that, or if they're not using the boat much, maybe once a month, and they pay a guy to live on the boat, and drive the boat and watch over it and stuff like that. I don't know, some of these characters get more. They get $2-3 million a month, depending, if the family, the father's worth, $18 billion or something like that, he may give them, a stipend of $5 or $10 million a year or something like that, then they could get a big yacht, you know, and then they could get a plane. But a lot of the ones that are, a lot of these people have policies where they insist that the kids go to school or work. They don't allow them to just sit around on $1 or $2 million a month allowance and do nothing because it leads them to drinking and drugs. And it also leads them into being fanatical in some activities. Like they might get all psyched up on weightlifting or some martial arts or something like that and make it into a lifestyle. So they usually want them to get a job and work so they could, you know, they could start a small business. They could start a gym if they like weightlifting, and the family usually goes for that. So they could hang around their own gym and work out a few hours a day, and you know, their family would be fine with that because they're working, you know, or own a restaurant or open up a bar. They'd be okay with that too usually. Or they would maybe not like the drinking. I don't know. So that's really kind of what, you know, these people get on to. But anyway, so I was concerned with this heat wave, and I started thinking God wants to pour the last ounce of punishment on us before He redeems us. But I was missing the boat. That's why the Lord was getting on me with this. It's not it. It is it in part, where, but not exactly. I wouldn't phrase it that way at all anymore. It's where in the furnace of affliction, and it's actually a furnace to heat. So that's what happens before you get delivered, like with Egypt. Okay? And the Goyim are in the heat wave, but they're not going to get delivered, they're going to get destroyed. And it's a warning for them to come. What do I mean? Well, we know in the daughter of Babylon there's fires all over the place burning them up. Okay? We know the ones that attack Israel in Zechariah 12 get burned up by the two witnesses. And Europe is suffering. Not only is the heat, there's fires breaking out. Okay? Canada, bad fires. Sicily, Algiers, Greece, and I believe other places. I think Russia got fires. They're getting, these fires might get out of hand. More of them, I don't know. But the fires are also indicative of a furnace, right? Flame, right? Burning things up. It's showing them what's to come if they don't knock it off. Now, some of you will say, well, they don't know. And I'll say, I think you're right, they don't know. They're in a delusion. They don't know, and they wouldn't listen. They're going to be doing wicked until they're not on the surface of the earth anymore. That's when they'll stop being wicked. They're just not going to stop. You could tell them anything, they won't believe it. All they understand is brute force, and then it's too late. That's the only thing they understand. They don't have faith. Faith is believing in what you don't see, what you don't. Okay, the unclean spirits appear to them and talk to them. So it's not exactly the kind of faith we have, it's something different. Not much there. And they deceive them and lie to them. You know, in Isaiah 13 into Isaiah 14, and talking about Satan goes to the pit, and they look at him and says, is this the man that everybody feared? It's in there. And I keep telling you, don't fear him. I saw this schmuck, okay, in a vision. There's nothing there, okay? He looked, I was in, one more time, I was in Tiberias many years ago in my apartment, which had sliding glass walls. Not exactly a balcony, but the room opened up and it had a fence that came up to that you waste to stop kids from falling out and stuff like that. Okay, so, I looked out in the vision, it was during the daytime, and I saw this thing flying through the air. Remember in Ephesians 6, the powers of the air? Okay. It wasn't flying like Superman with the hands out, the hands were at the side. Had a smock robish type thing on, which had like a round collar and opened like down like a V like this. It was a coarse fabric, probably a sackcloth looking thing. Believe this thing had sandals on. Believe they were brown leather. And it had long hair down to the shoulders that was greasy and salt and pepper. And the face looked like 70, 80-year-old person. Okay? I didn't get an odor. And was flying, not that fast, but flying, and came into the window, into the room there where I was standing, and then I put my finger up and pointed at it, and I said, in the name of I was not saying Yeshua then, I was still saying Jesus. In the name of and I kept saying Jesus, like Jesus, or maybe I said Jesus, like that, I might have done it. Probably that way, and this thing started shrieking like, and the shrieking kept getting more, and it froze in the air. It couldn't do anything. It couldn't move. It was going, and it kept increasing in intensity and shrillness, and it snapped me out of the vision, and that's when it ended. Okay? And it says in the scripture, he's just a deceiver. He's not powerful. Okay? Don't worry about this jackass. He just works with deception, and his power is getting dumb people to follow his bidding, and that's how he works. That's why Paul said witchcraft's a work of the flesh. That's how they do it. Okay? It's not going to do anything to you. You start giving place to the devil and sinning, then, he can come inside you, he can make your life very bad, But basically, he's not able to do anything to the believers. You could tread over all the powers of the enemy. Anything he could do, you could undo. Now he just confuses people and tries to make people that think that this is not the case, but it is. You don't have to fear this jackass. You fear God, not him. Okay? So, that's why I think we got the heat wave. Now, is the heat wave going on in the Pacific regions? I'm not aware of it. I don't think so. I haven't heard anything of it. It's mostly hitting Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Africa. So, when are they telling us it's going to let up here in Israel, which may not be a let up in the world? And when I say a let up, it's not an amazingly significant let up. Let me wait for this to refresh. It's 94 degrees now. We're going to be at probably 100 to 101. So that's actually a slight reduction already. But they're saying that on Sunday, they were telling us on Saturday it was going to be cooler, and it probably will be. I'm going to guess Saturday will be a high in the 90s, high 90s. If we're lucky, 97. Sunday, we could be down as low as 92, 93. And Monday, it'll be in the 90s. So they're saying it will be in the 90s for quite a ways out. For too many days for them to be able to predict. So we were getting in the hundreds, so if we go down in the 90s, it's going to be 5 to 10 degrees cooler. So we're not going to be, like I say in Israel, which I plagiarized from a guy from India who told me this. I asked him how the weather was in India, and he said it's hot, hotter, or hottest. And I say that about Israel. So we've had a few days that I would say are borderline hottest, although I have seen 113 degrees here recently, not the last few days, but the last few months. But we were be getting 105-ish, here and stuff like that. So I would say when it's over 100, it's hotter. When it's over 103 or 105, it's hottest. Let's say over 105. And when it's under 100, then it's hot, you know. So for us, let's say 90 degrees, you're going to see most of Israel be functioning. They'll be outside, they'll be running errands, they'll be doing things. They're not going to stay inside, okay? Where if you went to New York or most places in America, many places at 90, it's a heat wave and they won't go outside. Last night I went outside and I was sitting outside for about an hour and a half, and I was sweating, it was hot, and then finally it got me weary and I had to go back in earlier. I was going to try to stay out till about 10:30, and I went in a little after 9, and then I had the iPad on and I don't know what I was going to watch something, and then I fell asleep and I woke up about 12:30, and I got up and got ready for bed because I just fell asleep not planning on sleeping, so the bed wasn't right or anything, you know. So it's I don't like it. I like the fresh air. I went outside for a little while this morning. I was a little uncomfortable, not very uncomfortable, and it's starting to let up. Okay. And they're saying it'll be more like seasonable weather. Well, for weather to be in the 90s now is about right, you know. That's August weather too. And then with September, you hope it's going to cool off, and you hope, and it doesn't cool off soon enough, you know. October's usually very good. Now, what we haven't been seeing the last 2 years is the fast transition into horrible winter weather. Last year, we went a long time till we got into winter weather, which I think was in December. And we were having nice days, and I was sitting outside and stuff like that. You know? Now, sometimes in the winter, before I was using the patches, I'd go outside and I'd put on warm pants and shoes and a shirt, a sweatshirt, and a hat. A lot of times I'd have a hooded sweatshirt, and I'd put the hood up, and I'd sit in a chair in the sun, and I would fall asleep after the broadcast. I'd take a snooze outside in the sun, you know. Of course, it's cold, but the sun would warm it up, you know. The dogs like the cold as long as it's over 40 degrees, which it almost always is in Israel over here. I mean, they were a lot happier at 45 or 48, you know. But if I let the little dog's hair grow, where they get hair like this, they can stay out at 40 degrees. It doesn't bother them. They stay warm real easy with long hair. So I let them have long hair in the winter. Also, they don't care about the rain as long as they're just out a few minutes in the rain, because they got usually 2 coats and it doesn't affect them. It's the outer fur got water on it, but they stay warm. And then when you bring them in, then the tile floor gets muddy, but then that's why you got floor wipes, you know, so you mop it up. I got to order some gel beds for them because we still got a long way to go. And I had some cooling mats for them, but because they had all those ticks and stuff, I was afraid they'd had eggs or something in there, and I didn't want to wash them and afraid the eggs would get in the washing machine, so I just threw them away. They were cheap. I gotta buy some more. I had a nice one for Chief that was rubber on the bottom, and it had a little bit of a fabric on the top, of kind of a woolly kind of fabric, and he loved that in the winter. He really liked that. I like to get him another one. I'll look for it. I'll have to see what I can get him. We got something from Mommy that, but I don't want to give him, he's old, I don't want to give him anything like that for the bones or anything. I don't. So look, that's just another sign that we might be in the year of redemption and year of recompenses. We're in the middle of this year. We are, no. Is it possible that this could roll into? Yes. When does the year turn? Very late February, beginning of March. Rough cut, say March 1st. There's a rough cut, something like that, right? So, we still got a lot of time left. Now, are they stacking up for war in the Pacific? Oh my gosh, are they ever? Japan's in it up to here. Well, up to here. Let's say up to here. South Korea, obviously, North Korea is going to want to unify with South Korea. North Korea again told Putin he would send them 100,000 soldiers. I don't think Putin's taking them up on it. Now, if to fight in Ukraine, is that, what will America and the NATO countries do? Well, they'll blow their top. Will they attack North Korea? I don't think so. Could they give Ukraine equipment to attack North Korea? Like, give Ukraine a sub that shoots missiles? Yeah, they could, but they wouldn't. They'd have to send the Ukrainian Navy guys, if they have a Navy, to school for probably 2 years. I mean, to run a nuclear submarine, they take these guys that go to the Naval Academy mostly, which is a 4-year college, where they learn all about the Navy and the military and boats, and they learn how to drive all kinds of boats, probably not submarines, but they probably take them out on submarines and stuff like that. They may go out for a few days to get the idea what it's like being on a submarine. I don't know. I imagine they take them out a little anyway. And they learn how to operate boats. A lot of them, the officers out on the sailing boat, and they're trying to teach them how to navigate. And I think the more modern, like the boats built in the last 25 or 35 years, maybe the last 40 or 50 years, I don't know, are not highly sinkable. I don't think you can sink them like these big destroyers and missile cruisers and stuff. I don't think they sink. I think they won't sink. And I think like Navy SEAL has these boats that maybe 35 or 50 or 60 feet, something like that. And they're very high-speed boats, and they strap into chairs, and they use them to deliver Navy SEALs to a target, which could be an oil platform, or it could be a land-based thing, or a ship, or something like that. And you can see movies of these boats hitting big waves, and they overturn. The Coast Guard has had boats like this for decades, and when the guys go out in these boats, they wear breathing gear, like skin diving tanks and a mask, because in case it flips over, it may take several seconds for it to right itself in the water so they can breathe with the breathing apparatus. And with the Navy SEALs, I don't think they do that, but I think that the cabin they're in probably retains air for a little while anyway. And they're not regular people, they're highly trained, so they can hold their breath for probably 2 minutes, so they can manage it, or maybe they issue them a small breathing I don't know. But anyway, they're not going to give Ukraine, $500 million or $1 billion submarine. So, I don't know what'll happen there. But anyway, Putin doesn't seem to be taking North Korea up on that offer. North Korea soldiers would probably commit grievous atrocities on the Ukrainian civilians, and that would get the world mad. Now, Biden is saying he's starting to report Russian war crimes in Ukraine to the International Criminal Court. Now, what is he doing? This is a war drum. Because if they get into a fight with Russia, now he could say we're trying to stop Russia from committing all these atrocities and human rights violations and all that stuff. That's what that is. Okay. I mean, They get Australia involved in this, the Philippines are involved in this, Guam's involved in it. Um, Japan has American bases like in Okinawa and stuff, and they're involved in this, and Japan and South Korea. I mean, it's huge. And China, Russia, and North Korea are involved in the Pacific region. So this is brewing massively. And in Europe, it's obvious that it's Russia and NATO. Of course, Ukraine is the pivot point of this next war. And I believe these wars will be to weaken the nations so they can't mess with Israel when Israel has the two judges, the two witnesses take over. And the bad shepherds of Israel are gone, which is the government and the rabbis are even in the government now. Shah's United Torah Judaism got 15 votes to go. Well, they're down. They probably got about 11, 12, 10 votes now. They're down. But, so they're going to be gone, and the nations are going to be freaked out because the despots running Israel are no longer above earth, and they're going to be crazy, but they're not going to be able to do anything because they're going to be having their hands full with the wars. Now, the countries that could really bother Israel would be Russia, of course, the European Union countries would rise up, and China would be able to rise up. So the most powerful countries in the world are going to be involved with killing each other. Okay? And that will allow Israel to get itself set up and start occupying greater Israel, and where we're going to be getting a lot of houses that we never built. And a lot of wealth and riches, because they're going to leave all this behind. Where they're going to take it with them. The Egyptians tried it, and we broke into the pyramids hundreds of years ago. People did anyway, and they found the wealth and riches sitting there, and they just found corrupted, deteriorated dead bodies, basically bones and mummified remains. So they never took it with them, but the gold and the jewels stayed there. And that's it. Nobody takes it with them. Okay, so this is my theory that they'll be distracted. Now, why is this not happening to most of Africa and South and Central America and the Caribbean? Because they're not a threat. They're not going to do anything to us. They don't operate across oceans and stuff like that. They don't have that kind of military. They don't have that kind of experience. They don't have that kind of an orientation. Okay? What about the DOB, the Daughter of Babylon? Well, it's going to get it, but that's a separate event, but a similar time frame. Okay? And when they're beginning to get it, it's time for the harvest. People are going to be leaving the DOB. Since we read about things happening in that day, Zechariah 12 is a one-day event that day. The same with the Daughter of Babylon destruction. It's one day. Now, I don't know how that happens and it gets destroyed in a day. It's suddenly in a moment, in an hour, in a day. These are the words you read, but I guess they just do a massive attack on the place. And the fires breaking out could be a Sodom and Gomorrah kind of fires raining down from heaven, hail and brimstone, or it could be missiles and rockets and stuff like that coming from multiple countries, just pelting America. Those dirigible balloon type things they've flown over America could be used to create fires with lasers or whatnot. I don't know exactly, but they have various technologies that could be applied. So it's not going to be able to do anything, and then the other countries are going to be so distracted attacking the daughter of Babylon, they're not going to do anything to us, and that's not going to. They're not going to really be able to interfere with the second Exodus. And I know emphatically, beyond a doubt, the two witnesses are going to be traveling around the world, and I don't know why they would want to travel to many nations unless it's to basically deliver a message: let my people go, and by the way, send them out with wealth and riches, like Pharaoh's Egypt sent them out with wealth and riches. And that's basically, if they don't want to let them go, then all the plagues, like Moses and Aaron dropped the plagues on Egypt, and the two witnesses have at their discretion to deliver any of the plagues they want to, as often as they want. Now, could they deliver blindness? I think so. Paul had called blindness down on a guy. They could do that, although Moses and Aaron didn't do it. But they got so many things that Moses and Aaron did do that they could do that would be, you know, they'd be able to do that. God told Moses and Aaron specifically what to do on what day in terms of the plague, and, you know, and when to lift it and all that stuff. God did it. But with the two witnesses, they have the ability to do it as they see fit. All the plagues, any of the plagues. And I don't believe that would be entirely restricted to the ones that were dropped on Egypt. I think they could probably create other plagues if they wanted to, you know. How about blowing a strong wind, as in a storm or a tempest, at some famous person that rips their clothes off? And what would that do? I don't know if they'll do that because it would be gross. They may not bother with that. It's also, it'd be funny, but not really of any great importance. So anyway, they'll be traveling to different countries. So that's how I see the pieces coming together. Now you got to also understand that the annihilating of the nations he dispersed the Jews into, found in Jeremiah 30 verse 11. You should look it up. It's in your Bible. It's always been there. Just because the church doesn't teach it doesn't mean it's not valid, for crying out loud. And it hasn't been fulfilled. And it will be, and it's associated with the birth pangs. So they're going to be so discombobulated. Now they've got such modern weapons that are capable of such massive destruction in a relatively brief period of time. It's amazing what they can accomplish. So it's very interesting, and I think that this is what the heat wave is. I could be wrong. I don't think so. The Lord was really bothering me about this for, I think, 2 days to study it, look it up. Like I looked up the 9th of Av, you know, Tisha B'Av, and lots of bad things happened on that. Some of the Israelites are saying this business with what Netanyahu's doing is a Tisha B'Av. I don't know. The protests are going to get worse in Israel. That I think you could take to the bank. They're going to get worse, and they're going to get heated up. And now he's moving on to the Judicial Selection Committee, and they're also going for the draft exemption for the ultra-Orthodox. So they're continuing to do this. This lovely economics minister, or minister of the economy, Smotrich, hasn't done jack to reduce housing prices or anything. It's nothing. Nothing. I mean, he's just as bad as all the other economic ministers. They don't do anything. See if anything popped up recently here. Let me check the chat. Oh, they did delete our chat. I think they did. Let's take a quick look. So somebody's doing it. Spiritual warfare on them. Relentlessly. Just keep doing it To the people that are deleting the chat, do it all day, all night, intermittently, just keep pounding them. I'll switch to all messages and see if anything comes back up. No. Okay. Put my email address back in there. That's all they really accomplish. See, I think they come around and they hit a site like us because they hate Bible. And then they go around and hit other sites that they hate, right wing or whatever they go after, I don't know. Let me bother them. I'll put the offering information back in the context here as well. Now, they might not be doing this with a live person. It might be some sort of a bot that they send around that does this. They give it a list of the YouTube accounts they want it to go to, and it just goes and travels there and does it. And it probably doesn't come back again. So, oops. Let me see if they manage to delete what I... let me get back in here. Were they able to post? What's going on? Let me get out of here and go into it again here. What's up? No, they do. It does stay pinned up at the top. Were they able to post? And also pray that the Lord gets, takes care of them, that they reap what they sow for this. Okay? So let's just get them with both barrels, prayer warfare and spiritual warfare, and just put it to an end. I don't think it's YouTube doing it at all. I just don't see why they would do it. So that's it. So I'm Moshe, my wife is Rivka. Thank you for praying that her business takes off. It looks like it's going nicely. She's having meetings today with people that want to work on this stuff. She's working with the patches. Okay, so please pray for me and my wife Rivka for our peace, safety, protection, joy, happiness, healing of our bodies, and keep praying her business does really well. And pray for our finances, and pray for our animals and pets to be happy, healthy, and whole, and don't run away. And pray we get help changing a tire in our car. We got them a little kind of old to bend down. I don't bend down that great yet, although the patches I'm bending down more and better. But pray we get somebody to help us with the flat. And I think we have insurance that'll have somebody sent over here to help us. But pray we get some help changing the flat. We had a flat. We were going to go out last night. Well, in the afternoon, my wife had got reserved tickets for some movie. I haven't been to a movie in 9 years, probably 8 or 9 years. So she wanted to get me out of the house, and get herself out of the house. I didn't know what to do. Most of the restaurants around here are crappy and overpriced, so that wasn't such a great option. So she said, let's go see a movie. So we were going to go see a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie, a new one. And then we went out and I got all ready to get in the car, and then we had a flat. So she called them up and told them what happened, so they refunded her the money because she got her reserved seats for this. So they refunded her, so we'll get it fixed and then do it again. So normally I wouldn't go out, but patches, now I got energy, motivation, and desire to go out. I lost all the hair on my legs. I used to have hairy legs, and it's growing back all over my legs. It's kind of weird. And on my chest too, I had none, and it's growing back. Weird. Nice weird, I guess, And so, I have to admit, I think I've become a foodie. You know, what's a foodie? A food aficionado. You know, somebody that likes all different kinds of food. I've been watching on the internet about food. You know, and I'm especially interested in food from the Orient, from Asia. You know, and we don't get a lot of good food in Israel. That's I've told you that many times. It's just not good. You know, a guy in the neighborhood opened up a food truck, and he has kebab sandwiches on a hero bread. You know, a long loaf of baguette. You know, and is it good? Yeah. Is it great? Oh no, it's slop food. But you know, for Israel, it's good. You know what I mean? If you know what I mean, you know. Most of the chicken wings you get from the restaurants are pre-cooked and then they nuke them in the microwave and they got sauces all over them. So that's not really good food. You know, it's just, you know. You can get reasonably good hamburgers, but they're so expensive and it's just a stupid hamburger. I can buy Black Angus frozen hamburger patties and put them in a frying pan, you know, flips, put them on bread or whatever I want to, and then you know mustard, mayonnaise, ketchup, hot sauce, whatever I want to do, mayonnaise, all of the above, and you know, and eat it, you know. Or I could also take some onions and throw it in there, you know, all that stuff, right? And it's going to be, you know, better, especially if I get the non-kosher meat, which isn't washed and salted, which ruins the flavor of the meat completely and the texture and everything else. So you don't need kosher food. There is no such thing in the Bible in Moses' law as kosher food. It just doesn't exist. It's the clean animal and the unclean animal. So they've exaggerated it and made it into insane proportions. And then when you read Acts 10, Yeshua said pretty plain as day to Peter that he made all the food clean. And that's consistent with you can't follow the law because there's no altar that's been cleansed. There's no priesthood. There's no temple. There's no tabernacle. There's nothing going on. And yet you're still not coming under the curses of the law for not following the law. And if you break one aspect of the law, you break it all. So, you know, in reality, can you really follow the Sabbath without being able to do the Sabbath offerings? No. You don't do them. The priests do them on the cleansed altar. Minimally, they would need that. And, you know, preferably a tabernacle and a temple. But no, it's not in existence. And there's no ordained, anointed priesthood that knows Yeshua doing any of this. So it's not going on. Okay? So you can't really follow any of the holidays because of all these offerings. You know, and, you know, people like to follow the Sabbath. And I do, to some extent, and you know, okay, you know, I don't get on them for that, and you know, but you have to understand that you're just doing a memorial. You can't really follow the Sabbath. It's more than just not doing servile or regular work. It's more than that. Okay, so you got to understand that. And, you know, when I tell this to people, they get upset with me because they think I'm taking their Jewishness away or something like that. Nothing could be further than the truth. I'm just acting as a Bible lawyer. You break one part of the law, you broke it all. And you're breaking the law all over the place because you don't have a priesthood, you don't have an altar, you don't have a tabernacle, you don't have the temple. No sacrifices, offerings are being done whatsoever. Has been the case for many, many, many centuries, and that's the reality. It's about 2,000 years it hasn't been done, really. Although there was some brief interludes occasionally. But, okay, so that's not, you can't fulfill the law. So if you break one part, you broke it all. So you got to use the Bible lawyer logic when you apply this, you know. So I've turned into a foodie, but you know, being a foodie in Israel is frustrating, but I'm gifted with a wife that can cook like all get up. I mean, this woman could really cook. When we lived in other countries, she took a pretty extensive course in how to make sushi. And she could really make sushi. I mean, better than what you get in the restaurants. She buys the right rice. And, you know, we go to work. Like, we'll get salmon and put salmon on there, or tuna. Put tuna in there, You can put, avocado and different vegetables in there without meat if you want. You know, you can put the wasabi in there. We can buy plenty good wasabi here in Israel. I mean, as good as I ever had anywhere else. And the ginger that's, you know, not fresh ginger, but they preserve it or something. That's, we have that too. And we get the sauces, the soy sauce. You can get the low sodium, the full sodium, whatever. Usually we just get the full. And we eat the sushi. Normally we don't cook the fish that we put on the sushi, although you could. And, the variety is a little limited, and that's it, you know. But, there's a steak guy here that has non kosher steak, so the taste isn't ruined. It's beef, so it's from a clean animal if you want to cover that. But Yeshua in Acts 10 made all the food clean. So, people get upset with me, but if you were going to eat, shellfish, and well, they eat the bottom feeders and you'll get sick from that and all that stuff. Well, then you're saying Yeshua made it clean, and what he called a cleansed food, you're saying you're going to get sick from. And that's not something you should say. Okay? I mean, people could be idiots. You can go to a restaurant and order a Caesar salad with poison oak and poison ivy, and if you eat it, you're going to be in the hospital in a bad way, probably on breathing support or something like that. But what kind of idiot would do that? You know what I'm saying? I mean, once in a while you hear of people, they take poison ivy and that stuff and they burn it in a garbage can, a metal garbage can, and for some reason they don't have the brains to not inhale it. I mean, if you're going to burn that to get rid of it in a garbage can, I mean, I would rather see them put it in a plastic garbage liner and double bag it and give it to the garbage guy. So if it's double bagged, if the bag breaks, it's the second bag, and they get rid of it. But if you're going to dead bent on burning it, I would say get the stuff with gloves in the garbage can, maybe put a face mask on, wear sunglasses, and throw your lighter fluid or whatever in the garbage can, and then throw a match in there and from 5 or 6 feet away, and then get about 30, 40 feet away and stay the heck away from it. But it seems to me it's a reckless, dangerous thing to do, and I don't think I've ever done it, nor would I do it. It's so people can be idiots. You could take a salmon and leave it in the car overnight in the hot sun and then take it and eat it and see what happens to you. I wouldn't try it. I don't think you'll be a happy camper, you know. So there's all kinds of stupidity that people can do. Thoughtfully here in Israel, the food inspectors for the restaurants are pretty darn good, and most of the restaurants are kosher. So they make sure that nobody's going to eat bad meat and get sick. That would kill the kosher certificate if you complain to the rabbis. The rabbis would get very, very concerned because that's bad for business. So if the guy was feeding you, 2 or 3 day old tuna that wasn't properly cared for and you got sick, most of the time you would taste it when you're eating it and you just spit it out and complain to the restaurant. So there's not really any great restaurants for us to go to eat at. I can get decent pizza, I can get an acceptable sandwich, big deal. That's not good food. And I got a fusion place that delivers Thai, Chinese, Japanese. It's not super expensive because I can get like 3 to 5 meals out of it. Usually after about the third day I stop eating it, but I can get 3 good meals out of it, so it reduces the price nicely. And it's not great, but they got a real thick noodle that I never had anywhere else. That's soft, and they make them there, and they're fresh and they're pretty good, but it's not the Chinese food that I know of from eating it in many countries. It's not. And the Thai food's not like real Thai food. The only thing I know that's authentic is the vegetable egg rolls are as good as I would get in San Francisco Chinatown. But when I would eat in San Francisco Chinatown, the food was exceptional. And if I went to Japanese town, which was not near the Chinatown, but it was in downtown San Francisco, and they had good Japanese restaurants in other areas, it was delicious Japanese food. It was great Japanese food. I had no trouble with it, you know. And they had a Koreatown next to Japantown, and they had great Korean food. Although honestly, I'm not that high on Korean food. I don't like it that much. So we don't have sushi with a shrimp on it, or we don't have crab. We don't do that. I don't. I mean, you could buy that stuff, shrimp anyway, in Israel, but the other unclean foods, you can't even buy it in Israel. I mean, the Arabs only won't eat pork; they'll eat shellfish. So they, you see in the Arab supermarket, they'll have shrimp, but maybe they have crab or lobster, but I don't remember seeing it. It'd be very expensive. The shrimp's not that expensive. You know, there's a lot of unclean stuff that they could have, but I don't think they have it. Like squid and octopus, and calamari and stuff like that. You know, calamari I used to eat years ago in San Francisco. When you get fresh, you got the calamari has to be fresh, and they got to fry it in the pan just right, and they bread it, and it has to be. Maybe they put it in an oven. I don't know. I never saw them do it in the kitchen, but it has to. You gotta. There was this Italian restaurant that had it one day a week. I think Tuesdays, and it would sell out. They bought it fresh in the morning from the fishermen down by the wharf and the pier, and you would. We used to go there when I worked in a place. I was the boss. I used to take the guys, the salesmen, with me, and we would usually get there at about. We'd leave the office at 11 and get there before 11:30 for lunch, and we got the calamari then. If you got there at 12:30, sometimes there wasn't any more left. So I think 12:30 would be it for it. So you got it early. It was one day a week they did this. So we would do that, and it was good. You know, I mean, I remember that. But you can't. I tried cooking it once in my house, and I was trying to fry it, and then I don't know, a phone rang or something like that, and I had some calamari sitting near the stove on a paper towel or something that I put oil on. I don't know. And I came back and I couldn't find my calamari anymore. I had cats at the time. The little stinker couldn't resist. He grabbed calamari and I found it on the floor with tooth marks in it. He couldn't eat it because it was raw. Couldn't get a bit off. A little stinker robbed my food. But it's a hard thing to cook, you know. And then I used to go to the supermarket years ago in the States, and I would buy a pound or a pound and a half of shrimp, and the guy would put Old Bay on it and put it in a steamer and steam it and bring it home and eat it. Then in San Francisco, I used to buy Dungeness crab down at the wharf. Usually, there was another place nearby I could get it. They'd wrap it in a piece of paper, and then I would get a Bodine sourdough bread, a loaf of that, and I would come home and I would eat the loaf of bread when I was working in the house and stuff, and I'd eat the loaf of bread with the Dungeness crab for lunch, and that was interesting. But I used to love going to the Chinese restaurants, and they would have, you know, chow mein and chop suey. You don't get that here in Israel. I don't have it. You know, maybe in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, but I don't get it here. And I went once to Jerusalem, big, fancy Chinese restaurant with all the decor and the Chinese this and that. A big, beautifully laid out place with the tables and the round thing that would swing, you know, spin around and all that. I ordered the food and it was crap. I mean, it had no taste, no flavor. It was a joke. We got a restaurant like that in Tiberias. It's been around for years. We went, we sat down outside, we ordered, on a nice day, we ordered the Chinese food. The same junk, it had no taste or flavor. I never had food like that before. It was horrible. It was atrocious. Couldn't finish it. It had no flavor. So, it's, we used to get good. I was in other countries where I got excellent Chinese food, but dim sum, you know, I mean, dim sum was real popular. And you can't get that stuff here. I can't get good steaks here. I can't get prime rib here. Unless my wife makes it, I don't get it. I can't get anything good here. I could buy Snickers bars, which they call sneakers, like Adidas. Isn't that funny? They call them sneakers. It's Snickers to us. But what do I want to eat that crap for? Or a Milky Way? It's just pure crap. Let's go on a carbo overload, What's the point of eating stuff like that, French fried potatoes frozen here. Some of them are actually good. 70% of them are junk, and 30% you don't want to eat them. They taste that bad. But some of them come out good. Onion rings, some of them are good, and most of them are junk. So you could find that. Home fries or hash browns, you could find it, I think. But we don't eat that stuff. Grits, you can get grits here. Good ones, too. That's not summer food. I don't think it's really cool. Like, I got the air conditioners on, it's hot outside. I'm not going to go make I got these packets of soup, the powder, and I got a mushroom soup. It's fantastic, but I'm not going to go out there now and have a nice hot bowl of mushroom soup. For crying out loud, it's 90-something degrees outside. I don't want that, So, it's challenging here. Microwave popcorn. We were getting Orville Redenbacher, and then they get rid of it, and they'd start buying some made in Israel crap popcorn, and the supermarkets stop carrying the good stuff, so they force you to buy the crap in Israel, where they make a huge profit margin instead of importing something good. Not that Orville Redenbacher is that good, And I'm just tired of these merchants. These are leeches. There's a leech class in Israel called the retail merchants that try to squeeze the life out of the people. They're like landlords, or bankers. Terrible, terrible people. 2/3 get cut off. Zechariah 13, verses 8 and 9. Okay, that's what I got. Pray for better videos. Pray for peace of Yerushalayim. And thank you for the offerings. Those of you that are giving offerings, thank you. And offerings are always welcome. The more offerings I could get, if I got enough, I could promote the website more and do more with it. And I could promote Twitter and things like that. But I need offerings, Then I could get the true gospel out there to more people, but I don't know if that's what the Lord wants me to do. And I don't know if that would do any good. The wicked be wicked and the righteous righteous, so I don't know. But if you reject knowledge, the scripture says the Lord will reject you. It's not rejecting Yeshua or denying Yeshua. That'll do it also. But it's also rejecting knowledge. You'll do it just like denying or rejecting Yeshua. Same thing. That's in your Bible. Okay, kids, I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I'll keep you updated as to what's going on, but I hope you enjoyed this and got something out of it, and I'm out.